Sociology students, welcome back. So, if you'll remember, we're talking about research designs, and I ranked them in terms of popularity in sociology. So, we talked about survey as the most popular research design, or most used, I should say, and then ethnography, and now we're dipping down a little bit. The next one is experiment, and actually, there aren't that many experiments in sociology, and it has to do with the nature of what we're studying, and that is humans in interaction. So, an experiment is really just a comparison study, right? Where you have two different groups. One group is the control group, so they're just normal humans doing their normal thing. And the other group is the treatment group, where you do something to them. Maybe like if it was in like medical sciences, maybe we give them a pill or something. And then we compare the two groups to see if there's any differences between the two groups, a comparison study or an experiment, right? In sociology, these are really challenging. The first challenge with an experiment is the issue of ethics. So remember this thing in sociology or in all sciences where we're not supposed to do harm to the populations we're studying. Well, if for almost all like interesting things that a sociologist would want to study, we don't want to give that as a treatment. So for example, let's say we wanted to look at the effects of having a racist parent on children. Okay, so that means we'd have a control group, so we'd have children raised by non-racist parents, right? And then we'd have the treatment group where children would be raised by like openly racist parents, right? Like who's going to sign their kid? Well, you don't want to know the people who are going to sign their kid up for that, right? So even though we'd be interested in that, that'd be a great experiment. The only problem is we'd have to harm those poor kids by exposing them to racism to compare the two groups. One thing that does happen in sociology is sometimes some sort of natural experiments happen where like we can compare children who a bad thing didn't happen to them and we compare them to children that a bad thing did happen to them. And we can kind of call that an experiment. It's certainly not as objective because we can't control all those other variables. It's just like happening in the world. And then we go back later and we're like, well, that was close. So we'll just try to make this work. If that wasn't enough, there's also this issue of the Hawthorne Effect. The Hawthorne Effect, this is an interesting story. Okay, so there was a dude and his name was Hawthorne. And he was actually interested in lighting, and he went to a factory and he turned up the lights, so he made it brighter in the factory. And then he looked at how productive people were with the increased lighting. And so he did his study, he marked everything down, and wow, we having more lighting, according to Hawthorne, it increased productivity, right? And so everybody's excited. He was going to sell some light bulbs, or I don't know what his deal was. But then later he went back and he's like, well, I wonder what happens. Like, how bright does it have to be? What happens if I dim the light? Okay, so Hawthorne, he went in there, he dimmed the lights in the factory, and of course he was expecting productivity to go down. But you know what happened? Productivity went up again, right? And he's like, what's happening? And this becomes the Hawthorne effect. What was happening is people knew that their productivity was being tracked. And as soon as people knew that they were being watched, that they were being, they were seeing if you were going to be more productive or less productive, they were more productive, right? So what the Hawthorne effect means is that people change their behavior when they know they're being watched. Oh, I used to work at Joann's and I would do this all the time. So one of my jobs was to put the fabric back on all of the racks, right? I hated this job. It was super duper boring. It was hard. It took like a lot of upper body strength to lift those things up there, right? Hated it. And I would be like, whiny about it, taking my time. I'd like organize it by color, la-di-da-di-da-da-da, right? And then my boss would walk by, and all of a sudden I was like employee of the month. I was working so hard. I was like, oh yeah, I'm putting these away real fast, I'm good, right? As soon as I knew I was being observed, whoop, I turned into the excellent employee that I never was, right? This is why, have you guys seen in a lot of places they have those security cameras, but they don't always even have to have a camera in there, right? Just thinking that you maybe are being watched is going to prevent you from stealing stuff, right? Hawthorne effect. We behave differently when we know we're being observed. The interesting thing about Hawthorne effect is we don't even have to know why we're being observed. So the Hawthorne effect has even been discovered in double-blind studies where people don't even know what's happening, right? Everybody's just like following a script. Nobody's sure for sure what we're measuring, anything like that. And people still, they know they're being watched, so they act differently. Right? Have you ever been like doing something like singing in the shower or whatever, and you're just having a good old time, and then somebody walks by and you're like, oh gosh, and you change your behavior. As soon as you know you're being watched, humans change their behavior. This makes an experiment really hard in sociology, right? Because anytime we're looking for that human interaction, we're looking for that like talking, the behavior. And as soon as people know that they're part of an experiment, they're going to change their behavior. So it makes the experiment a really tough one. Darn it. Okay, I'll see it. We have one more research design. This one actually is really unpopular, but I think if you guys ever go to grad school, you should try it. So come see me in my next video. Bye, students.